Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, thank you for your service. There have been efforts, General, driven by political decisions regarding the shared use of the 3.1 to 3.45 gigahertz or S-band portions of the spectrum. Can you confirm that you have systems critical to our national security that reside on this portion of the spectrum?
Yes, Senator. We have a space surveillance radar that's currently in development that does occupy that portion of the spectrum.
Would it be not just radar, but perhaps communications that are in that portion as well?
As it turns out, I think the key emergency kinds of communications live just outside of that band. So as long as we manage very narrowly that strip, we would avoid those particular.
Okay, so it's primarily radar.
It's primarily radar
Okay.
for the Space Force.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the communications portion is not the part.
Well, I wouldn't want to talk to the other services
understand.
capabilities. So from a Space Force perspective.
Okay, thank you. Can you provide your professional military advice on how detrimental it would be to your mission and the security of our nation if you lost the use of this portion of the spectrum?
I think the most important thing I can say is I'm not exactly sure because we haven't done the technical analysis of exactly what vacating or sharing any of that spectrum would look like in terms of cost and technical performance. But we do have a study ongoing, and so we would hope that any legislative decisions or decisions along these lines would wait for that study to come out later this fall so that we could make the decision with data-informed analysis.
Have you been given the opportunity to provide your professional military advice on the DoD's use of this portion of the spectrum?
Yes.
Thank you. I presume you've expressed your concern with regard to the sale prior to this September study being completed.
I have described my concern as not knowing exactly what the impacts will be until I receive that study.
Thank you. I'd also like to go on record saying that I'm concerned about the DoD's approach to providing space-based ground-moving target indication capabilities, the GBMTI, to warfighters following the divestment of the JSTARS platform. It's my understanding that this capability is being moved under the funding authorities of the intelligence community. We do not have really to get into the fine details here, but can you share with me how you are assuming that the JROC or the validated requirements are captured in the acquisitions process of a platform owned by the IC community?
Because of the way the funding has been moved, we are focusing on two areas where we think we can provide some detailed level of collaboration. The first is in Milestone Decision Authority, which still, there are some decisions which reside at the OSD level and could be delegated to Secretary Calvelli. We're looking into what those options are, what the possibilities might be. That's for program management acquisition purposes. The other side is the operational concepts. This is still a DoD mission, the Space Force mission, to do this for the Joint Force. And so we have the responsibility to provide the operational concept for how this would work, and we will have to work closely with the program managers and sensor developers to make that happen.
Yeah, with JSTARS, the tactical capabilities to track these moving targets was available to our soldiers on the ground. We just want to make sure that that same capability is still found in a space-based system. And that's what we're really talking about here, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And the beauty of the sensors that are being developed is they're more survivable relative to the current threats we're facing, and we're going to do it at a global scale as opposed to a very small AOR the way the JSTARS.
We just don't want to get it lost in that this needs to be made available for Title 10 operations.
These are direct operational support activities. The mission falls to the Space Force and the Department of Defense.
Thank you. I understand that there is a legislative proposal in the works to integrate the reserve elements of the Space Force. This seems like a logical move as your service matures and embraces its organize, train, and equip roles. It's also my understanding that the Space Forces residing within the Guard element still reside within the Air National Guard and is organized, trained, and equipped by the Air Force. From your perspective as the Chief of Space Operations, what should this subcommittee consider to provide the most seamless oversight of these forces as the Space Force matures?
First, let me describe the reserve integration. I think this is a very important legislative proposal that I hope you'll give due consideration to. it gives us the flexibility to have both part-time and full-time guardians in the Space Force, which is going to give incredible career flexibility and hopefully serve as an innovative way to retain the kind of expertise that we know we're going to need moving forward. I think we've done a much better job of capturing kind of the key details that are needed in legislation to make that proposal work, and I hope that we can continue to work with this committee and others to make that happen. From the Guard standpoint, I've been clear from the beginning that the critical capabilities that are living in the Air National Guard for space are must-haves for the Space Force. That's the most important thing. I don't believe, because of the way organized, train, equip authorities reside with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and my responsibilities, that General Brown feels like he can organize, train, equip space capabilities inside the Air National Guard. It creates a little bit of a disconnect. And so the current status quo is the toughest to figure out how to do properly. Other than that, I think there might be some options that are worth exploring that are based on cost estimates and the like.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I would just like to commend the General. He has taken a very direct and strong approach with regard to advocating for our airmen and guardians on the subject of the missile community cancer study. This is a case of where they're finding cancers in areas where these guys that are basically working underground for extended periods of time, and the General has taken a very direct and personal interest in seeing that this be pursued, and that anybody that's out there, any one of these airmen or guardians, that they get help, they find out, and they keep track of. And I just want to commend him, and I would hope that the committee would make available time for him to be able to share with us moving forward just exactly what he has found with regard to any health concerns surrounding the cancers that seem to be more prevalent with these folks that are working underground in these missile silos. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, General. General